If you look at the Home Office's per capita dispersal rates, North East Lincolnshire sits firmly in the middle of the national rankings, but it is a very complex picture and is why we need more data. What does need closer examination is how dispersal is distributed locally. In our borough, placements are concentrated in a small number of wards, particularly those with a lot of private rented housing at the cheaper end of the scale. And these are also the wards facing the highest levels of deprivation. A big part of the reason for that is the way the scheme is structured. The government's accommodation contractor, Maze, is financially incentivised to source the cheapest housing it can. That inevitably drives placements into the areas with the lowest rents and the highest turnover. The result is the impact isn't felt evenly across the borough. It falls hardest on the communities already facing the greatest social and economic challenges. Any review should look closely how this pattern has developed and consider what additional support can be given to those wards. But again, that requires data, not assumptions, and it doesn't change the fact that dispersal is a compulsory matter. We also need to recognise the wider political context, as Councillor Friesen has said. In the recent local elections, Reform won all but one of the seats here. Many people voted on national issues rather than local ones, and this motion is an example of where the two worlds collide. The national debate about immigration and asylum and the practical reality of what local councils can and cannot control. Successive governments have struggled to get a firm grip on immigration policy, and the consequences of that are now being felt in local towns all over the country. But we still have to be honest with residents about the limits of our powers and base our decisions on evidence, not just national political pressures. That brings me back to the question of good governance. I do agree there's need for better data. I do agree there's a need for review that's constructive, practical, and within our control. The wider ask on withdrawing from compulsory dispersal is a symbolic gesture.
1 minute, Councillor Bright.
Thank you. And not deliverable under current law. I share concerns about housing and service pressures. I agree transparency is essential, but symbolic gestures are not a substitute for governance. Our residents deserve motions that are grounded in evidence and what this council can actually achieve. So while I support the call for better data, I cannot support the motion as a whole. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Bonner.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I wish I had 10 minutes to speak on this, but I'll stick to the limit, and I shall just use my prepared speech. I rise to oppose this motion because it fundamentally misreads the real North East Lincolnshire, our demographics, economy and our future. It treats asylum seekers and refugees as a burden when the truth is unavoidable. Our borough is ageing, our workforce is shrinking, and our economy already depends on migrant labour to function. Turning our back on voluntary resettlement schemes wouldn't protect North East Lincolnshire, it would weaken it. Our food production sector depends on migrant labour. Our care homes depend on migrant labour. Our NHS depends on migrant labour, and logistics and construction rely on migrant labour. That's people who come here, work hard, pay taxes and keep this borough running. Those workers disappeared tomorrow, key services would collapse and residents would feel the impact immediately in hospitals, care homes, supply chains, factories and in everyday life. Indeed, if it were not for migrant labour, some of our major employers would be forced to close. We're not a borough overflowing with young workers. We're a borough with an ageing population, rising dependency ratios and employers who cannot fill vacancies. We need people, families and workers. Demographic renewal that well-managed resettlement brings. New families spend money locally, support shops and services and help keep our schools open. They strengthen the local economy, not weaken it. Voluntary resettlement schemes give us a control. They allow us to plan, prepare, coordinate support and access funding. Leaving these schemes doesn't reduce demand on services. It just removes our ability to shape the process and hands control to central government. Residents deserve honesty. Withdrawing from voluntary schemes does not stop asylum seekers arriving. It simply removes our ability to manage arrivals strategically and humanely. The motion also calls for crime data broken down by nationality and immigration status. We must be extremely careful. Singling out specific groups, risks stigmatising communities, fueling division and undermining cohesion. Crime should be tackled wherever it occurs, but implying that immigration status predicts criminality is not evidence-based policy making. We should focus on facts, not fear, cohesion, not division, partnership, not withdrawal. Immigrants are entrepreneurs, taxpayers, volunteers, and neighbours. They start businesses, fill labour shortages, support public services and businesses, bring skills we desperately need. North East Lincolnshire cannot afford to become a closed borough. The motion does not solve the housing crisis, doesn't reduce pressure on services or increase local control. It risks achieving the opposite: less influence, fewer partnerships, and less ability to protect our residents. For these reasons, I urge members to oppose this motion. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Henderson.
Thank you. This is stuff we've got to talk about. So I don't object to the motion being brought forward, but it's a very complex motion. And as usual with Councillor Freeston, half of which I agree with, but half of which I disagree with. There's a version of this I could vote for, but it's not this one. I agree with all the noted points. It's nearly impossible to understand the true position as it relates to the volume and impact of immigration on our town. Still less how much of that immigration we all agree we want. For example, because our care services will not run without us bringing in overseas support. Still less the impact of successful asylum applications and student visas. So more clarity, as you're calling for, will be really welcome. I also believe the four things that Reform believe about how we want more control over our area. But I part company on the things Reform resolves to do because their resolutions are not the best way of addressing the problems that they raise, in my view. The motion points out that we have relatively few asylum seekers in our area as a percentage of our local population. It's about, I think, 270 out of a population of about 160,000. It also notes that their costs are funded and that the council's being funded to improve their integration into local society, inhibited, of course, by their inability to work, but noting the volume of local community work being undertaken, so they are making a contribution. I don't think retiring from voluntary schemes will therefore have any impact locally. I also agree with Reform's support for veterans, and I can't quite square that with the lack of support for Afghans who helped our troops during the conflict, or with people from Hong Kong, which was a colony of the UK and have been supported to come over here. So behind all this, it's really hard to find a way through this because the argument is so polarizing and so complicated, which is why it's almost impossible to table an amendment or anything like this. You've either got to like this paper or you've got to reject this paper. But I worry about the impact of low cost, poor quality, privately owned, hard to let, largely unregulated property that we have, and which is so appealing to those managing the resettlement, as Councillor Bright said. And it doesn't appeal to locals. So we're not taking away property that we actually want. I think part of the answer here is to work harder to improve our local housing stock, and it goes back to the previous motion. But I do worry about the impact of cases where a single person might be granted leave to stay, and this results in a multiplier effect where one person out of 270 means more, and that's the point I think that you're making. But I actually have no basis for that worry. And Councillor Freeston's modelling has little real basis in fact. So I think it is possible to reject this motion, but still pick out the relevant good ideas, specifically getting the data to settle whether this is a problem once and for all, and noting the downward trends on immigration in the official government statistics. And I do worry about the argument of setting a political group up against the establishment. You know, that's not the right way of doing business. And I'm discrediting Home Office statistics as is implied by the motion. I don't think the right way of going forward. So in summary, I think that the things that we could do is find out more about this, and we could do more work locally to improve our amenities locally, improve integration of people who want to come and live here, have a clear idea on who we want to come. Yes, influence and lobby local, like national government, for an effective immigration strategy that we don't have, but it's in our hands. And just writing a letter is not really going to solve that problem.
Thank you, Councillor Henderson. It's Councillor Basant, please.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. I cannot support this notice of motion. We have a long tradition in this area. Let's go back to the Vikings even. The Vikings came over. Was they immigrants? Was they illegal immigrants or what? I just don't know. We had many immigrants after the war we did, as such, a dispersal. We had the Ukraine situation. And to be honest, I think of those Ukrainian people, the suffering that they've gone through in their country, and we could have other wars. We could have other wars. The world is so volatile, it is. And to be honest, the time of Brexit, I found that very, very uneasy, with things like opening of the floodgates, all the Romanians, what would be coming over, etc. I find that sort of language is no good to politics. It's no good to politics. And to be honest, I'll quote one person. And we've talked about the care sector, the NHS, etc., and everything in that. You all know my wife has carers coming. We have one carer, Polish. She's Polish. Do you know what? I would say she's the best carer in the UK. She's able to stimulate Carol, she is. She's able to stimulate her, send her back home. People like Carol and other people, I know you're not saying send them back home, but people like Carol and other people would be lost without people like that. They're really keeping our care sector alive. And that is the main reason I can't support it. And talk about the local elections, I can't think of once when it was raised to me, this issue. I can't think of once when it was raised to me. I can't. People in this area, all the genuine people are compassionate, they are. We should be putting this to bed, but I agree with Councillor Henderson. Let's look at it in more detail. But to be honest, I cannot support it at all. Thank you very much, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Slawkins, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just wanted to rise to support this motion. Let me be clear from the outset, because there seems to be some confusion that this motion is not about legal migration. It's about illegal migration. Our country needs legal migration, as it's been pointed out, in areas that genuine skill shortages are needed. And that's not what this motion is about. This motion is about local consent, local capacity and democratic accountability. North East Lincolnshire already faces considerable pressures on housing, public services and local finances. We have young people struggling to find suitable homes, families waiting for support and services operating with limited resources. It's therefore entirely reasonable to say that additional placements should not be simply imposed upon this borough without the agreement of the elected council and without proper assessment of local capacity. As portfolio holder for the Safer and Stronger Communities, I must also consider community safety and the protection of women and girls. Violence against women and girls is serious and a persistent problem across society. It would be wrong to claim that every asylum seeker or migrant presents a danger. They do not. But it would be equally wrong of me to refuse to ask the question and safeguarding issues or deny any councillors access to meaningful information. We need accurate local data on crime, arrests, charges and prosecutions. That information must be presented responsibly, lawfully, including relevant nationality and immigration status data where it can properly be collected and published. This is not about labelling an entire group. It's about identifying risks, understanding patterns, and ensuring our police, safeguarding services, and community safety partners have the information and resources they require. Compulsory dispersal without local consent weakens accountability. Central government make decisions, but local communities are left to manage the consequences. Residents deserve transparency, and any resettlement scheme must be matched by significant housing, healthcare, policing, safeguarding, and integration support. We can support controlled legal migration while opposing an uncontrolled system that removes decisions from local democratic representatives. Those positions are not contradictory, they are responsible. And for those reasons, Madam Mayor, I support this motion.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Jackson, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I haven't made any notes in particular to speak on this matter because I wanted to see how the debate went first. But I mean, I just want to start by saying that I'm certainly against abuse of the asylum system and I'm against illegal immigration. So, you know, let's get that on the table to begin with. But one thing I do not do, Madam Mayor, is respond to threats. So regardless of what I say tonight, if you, Councillor Freeston, want to write to Conservative Central Office about me, bring it on, you know, write as much as you like. And I'm sure that, you know, they'll dismiss it knowing that you're a reform leader. But, you know, you just bring that on. We're not going to respond to your threats in the council chamber in this group. And
point of personal clarification, Madam Mayor, Councillor Jackson seems to be rather angry and irate. I wouldn't actually deem it a threat. May I finish? Can I not have a personal clarification?
No.
Okay.
well, it sounded like a threat to me, Madam Mayor, and I'm sure when the public hears this meeting being
Madam Mayor, I
broadcast,
think
they will
you've
pick
just
it
made
up.
a rule.
Well, sorry, Councillor Freeston,
Okay.
we are listening to Councillor Jackson.
Deputy Monitoring Officer, can we have a little bit of balance?
Can we just move on, Councillor Jackson, please?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Earlier on, Councillor Freeston said he was in favour of freedom of speech, but doesn't seem to want to let me have freedom of speech tonight on this particular item. I just want to take a particular argument against a few things that Councillor Sawkins said. He said that this notice of motion is all about illegal immigrants. Well, it isn't. He's also talking about the Afghan resettlement scheme. They're not illegal immigrants. And I guess it's also addressing people who've come in from Ukraine as a result of the Ukrainian war. They're not illegal immigrants either. Can I just remind members of the council that visitors we have from Ukraine are integrating into our society, are working, and are making a contribution to what's happening in North East Lincolnshire?
Point of clarification, Madam Mayor, there is no reference to the Ukrainians.
The Afghan resettlement scheme, as Councillor Henderson mentioned and others have mentioned, these were Afghans who helped our troops and our forces during the Afghan war and have come over here to protect them from what might happen with the current Afghan regime. These are interpreters, they are intelligent people, they contribute towards the local economy, and I think these sort of people are useful members of society in North East Lincolnshire. When we were the administration, we looked at all the finances behind this, and indeed members, I think, will have had a copy of this briefing note that came round from the Director of Public Health. I know it came to group leaders. I sent it round to all members of my group, obviously making it clear to them there are parts of it that aren't to go into the public domain. But just to show how complicated this issue is, this briefing note from the Director of Public Health extends to 18 pages. This is a very complicated area that is being distilled down into what is basically a very simplistic notice of motion. And what was very apparent to us when we were in the administration was that North East Lincolnshire was being more than paid by the government for the cost of all these resettlement schemes. This report from the Director of Public Health makes it clear that we have significant earmarked reserves that we have as a result of money that's come from government to enable us to help people who are coming into the area, immigrants who are coming into the area, in terms of helping them to resettle. It's enabled us to buy homes.
1 minute, please, Councillor Jackson.
Right, it's enabled us to buy homes and refurbish them that we wouldn't otherwise have been able to afford to do. And it enables us to deal with a whole range of other statutory responsibilities that the council has that we would still have, regardless of whether or not we were getting income from these various resettlement schemes. So I certainly won't be supporting this notice of motion tonight. And the bit that I found most disturbing is the section about wanting to get all the data about crimes, arrests, charges, prosecutions, convictions broken down by offenders' nationality and immigration status. That can only be required for finger pointing and causing division in society. I can't think of any other reason why you would want that information to be made and broadcast publicly. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Jackson. Councillor Crofts.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I actually didn't have anything written down on here, and unfortunately, Councillor Hawkins, I picked up on the illegal immigration. Okay, absolutely against it. Illegal immigration. This isn't written about that. It's written about immigration, migration. There's individuals and groups of people who are actually bigoted against in other countries, and they leave for a safer country. You've got to understand there are more than just us in this world. Okay, so let's go back to this motion. Migration, immigration. It mentions nowhere in there about illegal migrations, Madam Mayor, and I was really disturbed you brought that up, because now you're trying to turn this conversation for the Conservative group that it's about illegal immigration. It isn't. You've written a motion on migration and immigration. Councillor Clough has already told you we're in control of it. We have a say in that. Illegal migration or immigration, we have not got control. Absolutely agree with you. I'd love to stop it. If somebody can come with a great idea, brilliant. I'll move on to the only other little bit that annoyed me. I've got to say, Madam Mayor, although you said it's not threatening and bullying, you can report me to GCHQ if you wish to. Okay, you've got my opinion on illegal migration, but please don't do the threatening part. On Facebook, you also put it, if they don't vote with me, you'll know what North East Lincolnshire Council's about. Hey, if I'm out in a couple of years, Councillor, then I'm out. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. We've got 3 more speakers, and then I want to go to the seconder, followed by the proposer. You want to speak? Okay, that's increased it to 4, but no more. All right, thank you. So the next speaker is Councillor Downs.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Wow, what an interesting debate. So there are several parts of this motion that I feel I can support and get behind, but I do think it's important that we're honest about what this motion can achieve and what it can't. Members of my own group will know that I've spent weeks trying to understand this situation, looking at every fact and figure I can get my hands on, and really trying to understand, as I would do in my day job if I was asked to make a decision, what's the impact that these schemes that are being talked about in this motion are having on people in North East Lincolnshire. Some conclusions I've been able to support with evidence, and others are simply assumptions because the evidence is not available. So firstly, I do find from the information I've looked at that these schemes are having a measurable impact on housing. Once somebody in North East Links is granted refugee status after staying in dispersal accommodation, they currently have just 28 days to vacate that accommodation. They may then present to our homeless service. Over the last 2 years, there have been 164 refugee homelessness applications and a further 84 asylum exit applications, together accounting for around 5% of all homelessness applications. That is an impact locally. We also know that after leaving these schemes, 27 households in the last year have required bed and breakfast accommodation. 11 have been placed into temporary accommodation and 1 household into a refuge, all under our statutory homeless duties. They're not insignificant figures, and they do place pressure on temporary accommodation availability in social housing and the private rented sector. These pressures might not be overwhelming, Madam Mayor, but we cannot pretend that they don't exist. Likewise, the figures of 270 people in dispersal accommodation is only a snapshot. At the end of 2025, we were aware of 57 properties purchased in the borough by the Home Office. This tells us nothing about the people who've been granted asylum status and who remain in North East Lincolnshire. And that's exactly why I feel that the council is right to ask for better data so that we all understand and we're all debating this on a level playing field. Listening tonight to the confusion around people's migration status, whether they're illegal immigrants, just proves that point. I worked for LHP Shoreline when it was Shoreline, actually, for quite a number of years. And when I worked there, I used to see a number of what we used to call quick key properties, which was the properties that nobody wanted and that go through the system time and time again. I've been keeping my eye on those over the last few months, and recently I haven't seen any. And I can't say with certainty as to why that isn't, why there aren't those properties anymore. But I do wonder whether some of those lower demand properties are now being occupied by the UK non-nationals that are now accessing social housing in the town. That might be good for LHP and it might be good for us in North East Lincolnshire. But one thing I am concerned about is it removes the pressure from LHP and the incentive to improve this poor quality housing stock. Perhaps one of the reasons North East Lincolnshire is attracting so many people on low incomes to live here, regardless of where they come from, is because our housing is amongst the cheapest available in North East Links. That isn't solely a migration issue, it's a housing issue. And if we genuinely want to grow our council tax base, strengthen our economy and retain young people, then we've got to improve the housing that we've got across the borough. So I do support a review proposed within the motion, but if we're going to have a review, as Councillor Bright said earlier, let's make it a proper one. Let's examine the demand for social housing and private rented housing. Let's understand the changes in the number of HMOs we're seeing across the town. Let's speak to LHP, local housing associations, private landlords. Let's understand whether the poor property quality is linked to any of these schemes or not. And if it isn't, great. If it is, let's do something about it. If we're asking Cabinet to review these schemes, let's take this opportunity to ensure that that review is evidence-led and is comprehensive. There is a social impact too to all of this and these discussions. North East Lincolnshire has committed itself to building.
1 minute, Councillor Downs.
Yet over recent weeks, we've seen tensions, division and anger from people across this debate. I suggest, and I'm interested to hear the views from the East Marsh councillors, this has never been raised as an issue. I suspect that for people on those wards, they're seeing a big change in their wards quite quickly. There's a lot more I want to say, but I've not really got time. So I think from my perspective, and before we conclude, is we need to be honest with residents about the possibilities within this motion. This motion will not solve our housing crisis. It will not fix our labour market. It will not improve poor housing quality stock. It likely will not stop North East Links being a town that attracts refugees, even if they leave a scheme following any sort of review. These challenges are going to require broader decisions about housing, regeneration, employment and growth. And Councillor Friesen and his cabinet have got a lot of work to do. If we're serious about making evidence-based decisions on this, then we do need the full picture, the challenges, the benefits, the outcomes. Otherwise, as we've seen tonight, we're all here debating perceptions instead of facts, and none of our residents are going to benefit from that.
Thank you very much, Councillor Downs. Councillor Lindley.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. Can I just touch on a point that Councillor Friesen made in his speech way back when he said that he was criticising us for not arranging ward walks? I can assure you that the Scarto ward councillors have attempted on numerous occasions to arrange one, and your lack of availability has made that impossible. So I just wanted to put the record straight on that.
Point of clarification, Madam Mayor, I don't believe that's true. In fact, I spoke to a colleague who checked.
Sorry, but
so we'll have to withdraw that, and we'll clarify that outside of the meeting. So I don't think that's accurate.
I heard what I heard, Councillor Friesen. Thank you.
Thank you, members. Can we leave that and just carry on with the debate, please? That's not relevant now.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Unarguably, I think I can say that I work for the most multicultural organisation in the country, and that's our NHS. For over 40 years, I've worked for the NHS, and I've worked alongside many races and in increasing numbers. And I think we can't state enough just how much we are reliant on overseas workers for our NHS. If it wasn't for overseas workers, our NHS would collapse catastrophically. And I think we need to recognise that. But of course, we've also got, amongst those migrants that come to work in our NHS, we've got some from Iraq, some from Syria, some from Burma, now Myanmar, some from Afghanistan. These are people that have flown their countries to escape persecution, and they've settled in this country. And I think we need to recognise that, you know, all people, some people that come here, they're not all just here on the take. They're actually contributing to what we provide in this country. And as an NHS worker of over 40 years, I recognise that. I'll be brief. A couple of months ago, I was talking to a colleague, and they were just mentioned to me that they were going through their citizenship, getting their citizenship at Cleethorpes Town Hall. And I said, "Oh, well done." And I was pleased to hear that. And I said, you've been here a while. I said, why have you? What's brought this? What prompted you to go forward and do your citizenship? And the response shocked me. It was fear. Fear. And I think motions like this only stoke the fires of fear amongst migrants. It really does. It does nothing to help people who want to settle in this country. And Councillor Croft's absolutely right. There's nothing there about illegal immigration. That doesn't satisfy them to say, well, actually, oh yeah, I've got nothing to worry about. Doesn't say that. Doesn't say that. And I think, you know, I think this really is, it's a badly written motion. It's a motion I can't support. And like my other two colleagues, Councillor Freeston is more than happy, if he's happy to write to CCHQ and give them my name, and you know, and I'd look forward to having that discussion with them. But please do. But I think this really is, as an NHS worker, I think this really is an appalling motion. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Lindley. Councillor Shreve.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Been a very interesting debate with lots of statistics about the numbers settling, the amount of income we receive, the benefits, etc. This motion is not about that. Go back to the local elections. When I was campaigning, the reason Reform were getting support locally and nationally was 3 words: stop the votes. And that's what this motion is all about. This is Councillor Freeston appealing to his dwindling group of supporters on an emotional level. And it's a motion that didn't need to be brought. Give you an example. Leader does not need council permission to write to ministers or MPs. And in fact, he's done that already, I think, on other issues. So recommendations 2 and 4 are totally unnecessary. To me, the remaining recommendations are very sinister. I'm going to use a word that's not been used so far. There's a racist undertone that implies migrants. Let me finish.
You're a Conservative.
Excuse me.
Councillor Freeston, you'll get a right of reply. If you
Councillor Freeston, this is yet another example of you saying you want free speech, but on numerous occasions you've tried to stop.
Councillor Shreve, 1 moment, please. Councillor Freeston, you stood up to make a point of order.
Yeah, I think that he's been abusive and lied about me. Do you consider, Madam Mayor, do you consider it acceptable to hint that I'm a racist in this chamber? If you do, then just say so and I'll sit down.
Frankly, in your shoes, I would have waited until my right of reply.
That wasn't the question. I've got an.
I actually said the motion was implicitly racist, which it is. And it does imply that migrants
Madam Mayor, this motion Madam Mayor, hold on. This motion was
If you let me
accepted by the
finish,
monitoring
Councillor
officer.
Freeston.
Are you saying the monitoring officer has accepted a racist motion?
Councillor Shreve is entitled to his opinion, Councillor Freeston. Sit down, let him finish. You've got your right of reply.
I've known Councillor Freeston since 2015 when I actually campaigned with him when he was a Conservative candidate. And on a personal level, I'd like to think I could still like him, but that's getting more and more difficult
Councillor Shreve.
with the view he's taking.
No, no,
Oh, sorry,
no.
back on track,
Thank you.
promise you.
Members, it's getting late.
I know,
We've been doing very, very well up to this point. Let's not see things start
I've
to
barely
slide.
finished, but it will probably be equally explosive, the bits I've got left. I'll start the sentence again and hope that he will let me finish it. There is an almost racist undertone that implies that migrants are the major cause of crime and antisocial behaviour in a borough, not recognising the debt we owe to those who supported our operations overseas. What we have here, frankly, is a social media opportunity for Councillor Freeston to continue his relentless soap opera, casting everybody who voted against him this evening as villains. Not true. And on that basis, I will not support this motion.
We'll go now to Councillor Patrick.
Thank you indeed, Madam Mayor. How do I follow that? Madam Mayor, I won't be supporting this motion, not for any special reason. I'll be treating this motion like any other. If a motion cannot clearly show benefits to our borough and its residents, then it doesn't deserve to pass. But Madam Mayor, in a Columbo moment, there is just one more thing. This motion does pick up on a valid challenge that services and resources are under strain in our area, as in others, and we know the reasons: the challenges of an ageing population, poverty levels, the legacy of austerity, all valid challenges. But why this special focus on just 0.2% of the population? I think we all know why. We have heard it already tonight. All the talk of speaking for the nation, Britain first, all that stuff. But what I would say to people who write motions like this is that you might wave our flag and talk of pride in our history, but it's clear that you don't speak for our nation, because this motion doesn't have the best of British values. Nor does it reflect the history of a nation as a land of law, liberty, compassion, justice and kindness. And on the subject of kindness tonight, Madam Mayor, I think it really needs to be said, there's nothing illegal about being an asylum seeker. There's nothing illegal about being a refugee. There's nothing illegal about being a human being. It is important to remember what nation we are. We're the nation of Magna Carta, the Refugee Convention, and more recently, the Human Rights Act, all brilliant examples of our country at its very best. And yes, I'm sure at this point, some in this chamber might want to call me woke or a snowflake or a liberal. And please do that if it helps you to relax. And by the way, I'm not a liberal, I'm a socialist and a proud one too. We should celebrate our kindness and compassion, not condemn it. And let's remember all we have done. When other nations fell to war and tyranny, we were the country that took in the child Jewish refugees fleeing Nazi-occupied Europe, better known as Kindertransport, supporting Ugandan Asians fleeing the tyranny of Idi Amin, and Afghan interpreters and their families who risked their lives to support our forces in Helmand province. We will never know how many of our troops returned home safely because of their heroic work. And recently, Ukrainian refugees fleeing the invasion of Vladimir Putin, a man determined to deny the people of Ukraine the right to self-determination. There are literally hundreds of these stories that make me so proud to be British. But if one sums up just how I feel and makes me feel patriotic, it's the story of Cartwright's case. For those of you who aren't familiar with it, it is the legal case of an Englishman buying a slave in Russia when it was legal and bringing him home. And this was the witness was publicly using corporal punishment against his new acquisition, to which a complaint was made of common assault. But if the man was convicted of assault, then this would mean that the Russian couldn't be a slave. The case, of course, went to the right way, and the Judge William Murray I, Earl of Mansfield, summed up the case. The air of England is too pure for a slave to breathe, and so everyone who breathes it becomes free. Everyone who comes to this island is entitled to the protection of English law, whatever oppression he may have suffered, whatever may be the colour of his skin. Madam Mayor, this happened 500 years ago. It's our legacy as a nation. It's who we are, a story to tell proudly to the world, a story of a Britain which is worth working for, a story of a Britain which is worth speaking for, a story of a Britain that is worth fighting for. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Patrick. We'll go to Councillor Grice now as second. Right to reply.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I would like to start by saying I do second this motion. A couple of points. I've not written a long speech like everybody else, and enough has been said for ourselves. Labour said it themselves in their last motion. Priorities should go to those around here. So care leavers, our armed forces veterans, victims of domestic abuse, residents needing our help, residents of this borough. My support in this motion is to say, let's put them to the top of the list. That's where I stand. The points have already been made by a couple of my members and other members that it is putting a lot of stress on our services, a hell of a lot. And that, in my opinion, needs to stop. I'm not going to dwell any more on this, and that's for me. Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, when we've heard from Councillor Freeston, we'll go to a recorded vote, and it's your right to reply, Councillor Freeston. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Now, when people, indeed my colleagues, when they first started, they said, why did you leave the Conservative Party? And I gave them the answers, and whether they believe me or not, I don't know. Colleagues, do you now see why I left the local Conservative Party? You're simply not Conservative. Your voters will be absolutely horrified when they find out that you voted against this motion. Indeed, when you've stood up and promoted the right, the welfare, the interests of illegal migrants.
Councillor Freeston, let's stick to the script and the matter of the debate, not about your party and who you left and when.
I'm talking about the debate of this evening.
I think let's stick to it. You're pushing your luck.
Okay, I'll behave. So you've spoken about that there was no reference to illegal migration. Well, that's plainly untrue. One half of the motion was about the dispersal scheme, which, unless the Conservatives disagree, those under the dispersal scheme have at one point entered the country illegally and then been dispersed around the country. So either you got it wrong and you didn't read the motion, or you don't deem that those who enter the country on the back of a lorry or in a boat, you don't deem them illegal migrants. What would you deem them? It's a genuine question. I was not even trying to catch you out. I just, when you said it, I was going to do a point of clarification. I thought I'd just wait till the end. That's what you may call them, Councillor Bonner, and I don't have a problem, nor do I have a problem with Labour because I know where they stand on it. I have a problem with the Conservatives who purport to be Conservative when they're not. And you mentioned the Polish carer of your wife, Councillor Bazan. And undoubtedly, we have a lot of migrants who do some good work in the community. But I'm going to hazard a guess that that Polish carer didn't enter the country illegally, nor did she come under any of the Home for Ukraine or Afghan resettlement schemes. So I think the point that you're making, you're just getting confused with, and a few members have, getting confused about the points about the dispersal scheme, the Home for Afghan scheme, the Afghan resettlement scheme. And you're saying that we don't want any legal migration. That's not what we're saying. We want smart migration. So over to Councillor Linley's point about he works in the NHS and that the NHS is reliant upon it. We don't have a problem. If people get a work visa to come over as a nurse or a doctor or a surgeon, fantastic. Again, I'm going to hazard a guess, Councillor Linley, that you don't work with many asylum seekers. I'd imagine if you're a doctor based in Eritrea, you're going to get a work visa to come to this country. I may be wrong, but that would make more sense to me. So I understand that you consider it a threat, and in the interest of diffusing and maintaining relations across the chamber, I'm sorry if it came across that way. It genuinely wasn't intended. And as Councillor Shree said, we have had some proper good relations in the past, and I do appreciate the support you've given me. It is clear now that we are on a different side, not just party, but just way of thinking, which is fine. That's democracy. Disappointed that it's clear this motion won't pass. But again, we've had the chance to debate it. The public can see that we've raised it as an issue. And indeed, they raised it with us. They might not have raised it with you, Councillor Bazant. I can't understand why that would be. So thank you very much, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. So we'll now go to a recorded vote in accordance with the Constitution.
Okay, thank you, Madam Mayor. All those in favour say for, those voting against say against, anybody abstaining say abstain. Councillor Aisthorpe.
Against.
Councillor Augusta.
Against.
Councillor Batson K.
For.
Councillor Batson P.
For.
Councillor Besant.
Against.
Councillor Bonner.
Against.
Councillor Boyd.
Against.
Councillor Braisted. Councillor Bright.
Against.
Councillor Callison.
For.
Councillor Charlesworth.
For.
Councillor Clough.
Against.
Councillor Crofts.
Against.
Councillor Dawkins.
Against.
Councillor Downs.
For.
Councillor Emerson. Councillor Freeston. Councillor Goodwin. Councillor Grice. Councillor Henderson. Councillor Humphrey. Councillor Jackson. Councillor Kazmarek. Councillor Lindley.
Against.
Councillor Main. Councillor Mill S. Councillor Mills J.
For.
Councillor Morland. Councillor Parkinson.
Against.
Councillor Patrick. Councillor Sawkins.
For.
Councillor Shreve.
Against.
Councillor Taylor.
For.
Councillor Wilson.
Against.
Thank you, members. Result of the recorded vote, for 12, against 22. Motion fails.
Okay.
Move on to item 13, notice of motion 3. The notice of motion has been submitted by Councillor Jackson, seconded by Councillor Shreve, submitted in accordance with the Council's constitution. Councillor Jackson, you have 10 minutes in which to propose this motion.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and I hope this notice of motion might be a tad less controversial than the last one, but one never knows. Members will have seen the notice of motion in front of them about restoring the direct rail link from London King's Cross to North East Lincolnshire, Grimsby and Cleethorpes. This is a saga, to put it mildly. We lost this direct rail link back in 1992, and since then there has been extensive lobbying by members of Parliament from both the major political parties who have represented the area, so there's nothing political about this. Business leaders have also expressed their views about wanting to restore this service, as indeed have a number of trade and business organisations like the Holland Humber Chamber, for example, who've been particularly active in lobbying and have actually spent quite a bit of money in putting together policy briefings and business cases to support the restoration of the service. A number of these studies and business cases have clearly demonstrated the benefits to business, industry and tourism in Northern Lincolnshire in general for bringing back this service. If we want to continue with the regeneration of the area and attract more people in, new businesses, we need to improve our rail links with the rest of the country, including directly with London. On this basis, it was very disappointing that a parliamentary question to the Transport Secretary back in March of this year made it very clear that there was no intention to restore the service any time soon. And indeed, we've been the subject of several false promises over recent years from both Conservative and Labour governments. So once again, I emphasise the fact this is not party political. But Madam Mayor, we now have a new Prime Minister, one who is a supporter of northern towns and coastal communities, he tells us, who wants to see good growth in every postcode. So I think on that basis, Madam Mayor, it's worth us renewing our request to government to try and get this service restored. To be clear, Madam Mayor, all we're asking for is for LNER, who currently operate a number of through trains every day from King's Cross to Lincoln, to extend one train each way through to Grimsby and Cleethorpes. That's only an extra 40 miles. So we're not asking for additional trains which would take up valuable slots on the East Coast Main Line, which we know are at a premium. This is about extending existing services that already travel up as far as Lincoln. Indeed, Madam Mayor, the new LNER Azuma trains, which will be used on this service, which currently run to Lincoln, they've already had trial runs through to Grimsby and Cleethorpes. So we know there are no loading gauge issues, which could be put forward as an objection to running these trains through to Grimsby and Cleethorpes. But a variety of reasons have been given over the years as to why the service is not going to be restored. The latest one, Madam Mayor, was the suggestion that 15 to 20 million pounds worth of improvements to Market Rasen Station are allegedly required for safety and operational reasons. Well, that was a new one. And I've got a simple answer to that. If that is a problem, just don't stop the train at Market Rasen. Just bring it straight through to Barnetby, Grimsby and Cleethorpes. You know, that would work for me, and I'm sure it would for the residents of North East Lincolnshire. Now, Madam Mayor, we were told that renationalisation of the railways was going to be good for us. But let's just have a quick look at the facts here. We've got a nationalised track operator, Network Rail, and we've got a nationalised train operator, LNER. And both of them seem to be putting any and every obstacle in the way of reintroducing this through service. So nationalisation is definitely not working for us here in North East Lincolnshire. Not, Madam Mayor, that I ever thought it would. Now, it's interesting, Madam Mayor, that we have a private sector open access operator, Grand Central, who are interested in operating a through service via Doncaster and Scunthorpe. But guess what? Network Rail are also objecting to this. But while I'm talking about the Grand Central interest in the service, I'd just like to mention the amendment to this notice of motion, which is being proposed by Councillor Downs and Councillor Bright from the Independent Group. And I have to say, I fully support what's in the amendment tonight that they're proposing. So I'm more than happy to fully take on board the amendment from Councillor Downs and Councillor Bright. It might help us to move forward with the debate. I thought it was interesting a little bit earlier that Councillor Henderson said that he didn't like amendments to notices of motion. So I will actually be, he'll perhaps be the only person who might vote against it tonight on principle, but I'm perfectly satisfied to accept your colleague's amendment to this notice of motion, Councillor Henderson. So all I can say is, Madam Mayor, I hope that we get full agreement from across the chamber tonight to once again try and move this forward. And I hope you'll support the notice of motion with the amendments, to again write to government to ask them to try and step in and clear this logjam that we've had in North East Lincolnshire for so long in terms of trying to restore what is, in my view, and a view of a lot of other people in the area, an essential through train for North East Lincolnshire, connecting us with the capital. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Jackson. Before we have a seconder for that, I'm going to invite the monitoring officer to speak.
Thank you, Councillor Jackson, for that. You can amend your motion if you so wish. And if everybody agrees, we can simply have the debate on that to save everybody's time. Can I just have a show of hands if everybody's happy that we do that? Thank you. So the debate is simply on the amended motion.
So thank you, Councillor Shreve. Sorry to keep you waiting. Yes, you may second that.
I'm not going to reserve the right to speak on this one, given the hour, so I'll speak, but I'll make it brief. I'm actually old enough to remember the benefit of having a direct train to London. The 5:55 train used to get into King's Cross before 9 o'clock. I would also recall when Ross Foods was in its pomp, the benefit of buyers who could travel directly to our borough with the obvious economic benefits cannot be overstated. These days, most business people travelling north to us, it's almost like a safari tour. I've had many people comment on that basis. When I was travelling regularly on the route, I did come across commuters, but usually only as far south as Doncaster. A direct line would reconnect us with the rest of the country, with, in a very real sense, with the prestige and national recognition that would come. And it fits with the Prime Minister's objectives for the North. I know he says he's going to use AI, but I think he's going to use the northern version of that AOP. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Downs, if you'd like to speak.
Yeah. Councillor Downs, just to be clear, you would have had 10 minutes as the proposer to the amendment, so I still think it's only right that you have the 10 minutes.
Don't worry, I'm
If
knackered
you
as
wish-
well. I left the house at 7:15 this morning. I'll be brief. So I just wanted to firstly say that I supported the spirit of the motion, but as it stood, I felt it needed the amendment that Councillor Jackson's actually supported. So just for those that don't know, the position has moved on, not recently, but it was actually in March 25 when the open access application went in from Grand Central. Councillor Jackson is indeed right. There has been an objection from Network Rail. For those of you that haven't read the objection, I have. I'm sad like that. Their objection is actually about the train being too long at the Hayborough station and going across the crossing, but actually so does the TransPennine, which they didn't object to either. So given that, I do think that there's a real opportunity that we might actually see this route. But I do think we do need to be honest about what's being proposed. It's not a brand new direct service. It's going to transform North East Lincolnshire into some hive of activity. It's actually a service that will join another train coming from Bradford, link up with it. It'll wait at the station for around 15 minutes, which is longer than you'd be waiting if you changed at Doncaster. But the removal of that quick change might entice more people to travel between Grimsby and Cleethorpes. But I do think it's not going to see Victoria Street lined with gold if that's what we're promising. And there is a good positive here that this is a private open access operator. So there is a potential. I think when you talk to people about this, their biggest concern is the cost of the train. Given this is a private access operator, there is potential for more competitive fares, which I think all residents will welcome, and which is the reason why I'm happy to support this. Just before I finish, I did just want to read an email that I received today from Arriva, which a resident forwarded to me, and it said to the resident, "Thank you for taking the time to contact us. We are application to introduce a direct service between Cleethorpes and London's King's Cross. It's great to hear that North East Lincolnshire Council is due to discuss a motion to officially support the application. As discussed, this application has been through industry consultation and is now with the independent regulator, the Office of Rail and Road, for review. We anticipate a decision will be reached before the end of the year. The most impactful way of supporting this open access application is to write directly to the ORR. Endorsements from local authorities and community groups are taken in consideration as part of that assessment process. I'll be sure to keep you updated, which is the reason for our amendment to the motion. So I'm glad that that seems to have got wide support. So thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. It's Councillor Henderson next.
And once again, thanks to Councillor Downs for doing the homework that others could have done. I'm really loving the new Councillor Jackson. So Andy Burnham is transformed Manchester. He's now going to transform the UK. You support him. You see the transport links are the route to economic prosperity. That's amazing. The last debate you were calling for bringing back council houses. And in this debate, you don't want the market to decide who operates our trains. I think this is fantastic. I'm absolutely loving it. But I think that we've got an opportunity here to make our feelings heard in the way that Councillor Downs has said. But I think there are some concerns that we should pick up in that communication. And they are around whether it's really going to do those things that I was just describing. So as Councillor Downs said, the train will actually take longer because it's going through Donny. It's not going through the Lincoln route. There is a concern of which operator it would be. And half joking, but I don't think we can pick the operator. I think that's a commercial decision. Picking the route is a commercial decision. The price of a train, so as you all know, I work in London quite a lot. I drive to Newark because the train's so unreliable from here, and it's 200 quid return to get to London in business hours and get home in a decent time. So no matter what we do, unless we fix the pricing issue, we're not going to drive economic prosperity and that trading between the wonderful north and the beautiful south. And we must improve the frequency of the trains coming up here so that they do support business in the way that we want. So I think there's some very legitimate things that we could talk about in this letter. So and in my epiphany, like yours, Councillor Jackson, I commend you for an excellent motion. Thank you.
Thank you. It's Councillor Emberson next.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This is an issue that's been on the table for far too long. It's been debated, promised and chucked around from pillar to post with current and former MPs, ministers and governments like a toy for show and a toy that no one wants to play with. I'd love to see the project come to fruition, as the last time this service was offered was the year I was born, which is a third of a century ago. However, with any business plan, has any serious market research been conducted? Who and what are the target markets, demographics and business industries that want and will benefit from this service? Keeping on the theme of transport, Madam Mayor, this is our own local version of the Doncaster Sheffield Airport saga. Lots of dither and delay. With both projects, I'm more than happy to support and see regeneration and strategic infrastructure brought forward locally, and I'm happy to support pushing it on the table yet again. But realistically, with both projects, as I've mentioned, I'll believe it when I see it. Choo choo.
Thank you. Do we have?
Madam Mayor, may we get consensus on a closure motion?
We can do that.
It's proposed and seconded.
I second that, Madam Mayor.
6 people? Happy? Yes. Clearly nod. You.
Would you like a right to reply, Councillor Jackson?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Very, very briefly. First of all, thank you for members across the chamber for the support that they've given so far. And I'm so pleased that I'm ended up the evening in Councillor Henderson's good books. Not sure how long that will remain, but anyway. In terms of whether or not this service is viable, I would have thought it unlikely that a private sector operator, i.e. Arriva Grand Central, would be wanting to run a through train from King's Cross to Grimsby and back again if they didn't think it was going to be financially viable. So the fact that the private sector wants to run a service, I think, is a very positive indication. And again, my understanding is that all the work, in particular the Hull and Humber Chamber, has done around this, certainly indicates that there is a market for it. And I know, you know, a business case has been put together which justifies it. In terms of Networks Rail's objection to the Grand Central service, I mean, unfortunately, I'm a railway enthusiast, so a bit of a geek on these matters. My understanding is that their concern is that it's going to result in two trains having to merge, having to join up at Doncaster, one coming in from Bradford, as Councillor Downs quite rightly said, and then the other one coming in from Grimsby and Cleethorpes, and the two would then join to form one train. I think there's a concern from Network Rail that if one or other of those trains was running late, that could cause significant congestion at Doncaster. So I wasn't sure that it was about the length of the train at Hayborough. I thought it was more to do with potential logistic problems at Doncaster, but I could be wrong about that. But anyway, I think the case is strongly made, and I think there appears to be general support across the chamber. So I'm happy to support the motion and hope the rest of the council will. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jackson. So in accordance with the Constitution, I'll now take a recorded vote on the substantive motion.
Madam Mayor, in the interest of timeliness, may I propose that we suspend standing orders and get group consensus?
If everybody's happy with that, that's fine by me, because there's certainly, yeah, there's not.
Some nods. Yeah.
Okay, so we just show whether we're in favour? Done? Okay, we're done. Thank you very much, everybody. We've got one item left. Item 14, urgent business. There is no urgent business, you'll be pleased to know, for consideration at this meeting. Thank you very much for your attendance, and I now declare the meeting closed.